On my birthday, I got a message from Dad. Sold your laptop. Your brother needs a new watch. Be grateful we feed you. Then he added, also, you'll pay his tuition, $6,800 by Friday. I stated, no chance. He responded, then leave. You're cut off. So I departed quietly. The next morning, they found what I left on the table. Now my brother's panicking, my dad's screaming, and my mom's contacting every number she knows. I, 22M, never thought my 22nd birthday would be the day I finally broke free from my family's toxic grip, but sometimes life has a twisted sense of timing. The message came at 7:43 p.m., right as I was finishing my shift at the warehouse. My phone buzzed, and Dad's name appeared on the screen. I expected the usual birthday greeting, maybe even an apology for forgetting earlier. Instead, I got something that made my blood run cold. He told me he'd sold my laptop, the one I'd saved for 8 months to buy, working double shifts and skipping meals. Apparently, my younger brother needed a new watch for his upcoming graduation. Dad said I should be grateful they still fed me, as if I was some charity case instead of their son who'd been contributing to household expenses since I was 16. But that wasn't the worst part. He added that I'd be paying my brother's college tuition, $6,800, by Friday. Just like that, as if my bank account was his personal piggy bank. I stared at the message for a full minute, my hands trembling. This wasn't new behavior, but it was the final straw in years of watching them prioritize my brother while treating me like an inconvenience. Every achievement I'd earned was overshadowed by his existence. Every dollar I made somehow became his investment. I typed back a simple response, no chance. His reply came within seconds. He told me to leave then, that I was cut off from everything. The house, family support, everything. The finality in his words should have scared me, but instead, I felt something unexpected, relief. I'd been planning for this moment longer than I cared to admit. The past 2 years hadn't just been about working and saving money for college. They'd been about preparing for the inevitable day when I'd have to choose between my dignity and my family's dysfunction. That night, I went home and packed quietly. My belongings fit into 2 duffel bags, which said everything about how little I'd been allowed to accumulate. While everyone slept, I moved through the house like a ghost, gathering the few things that truly mattered to me. But before I left, I had one final task. I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out a folder I'd been keeping hidden in my room for months. Inside were documents that would change everything, copies of financial records, bank statements, and most importantly, evidence of something my parents had no idea I'd discovered. See, working at the warehouse had taught me more than just heavy lifting. My supervisor was a former accountant who'd noticed my interest in numbers and had been teaching me about finances and bookkeeping. When he mentioned how suspicious it was that my parents always seemed to have money troubles despite Dad's decent salary and Mom's part-time income, I'd started paying attention. That's when I discovered the truth about my college fund. My grandparents, Dad's parents, had set up education trusts for both my brother and me when we were born. Every birthday and Christmas, they'd made deposits. When they died 3 years ago, they'd left additional money specifically earmarked for our education, $50,000 each. My parents had been using my fund to pay for my brother's private high school tuition, his car, his expensive hobbies, and now they were planning to use what remained for his college education. Meanwhile, they'd convinced me I needed to work and save because there was no money for my education. I'd spent months gathering evidence, copying statements, and documenting the paper trail. What I left on that kitchen table wasn't just a goodbye letter. It was a complete financial audit showing exactly where my education money had gone, along with copies of the legal documents proving the funds were designated specifically for me. But that wasn't all. I'd also discovered something else during my detective work. Dad had been claiming me as a dependent on his taxes while simultaneously making me pay rent and contribute to household expenses. He'd been double-dipping, getting tax benefits for supporting me while actually profiting from my presence in the house. The folder I left contained all of this information, organized neatly with highlighted sections and a cover letter explaining everything I'd found. I also included contact information for the lawyer I'd consulted, one of my warehouse co-workers' brothers who'd looked over everything and confirmed that I had grounds for legal action. At the bottom of the pile, I left something that would really get their attention, a formal demand letter for the return of my education fund. with interest and reimbursement for the rent and expenses I'd paid while being claimed as a dependent. The total came to just over $73,000. I also left copies of emails I'd sent to the IRS regarding the fraudulent tax filings and to my grandparents' estate lawyer about the misuse of the education trust. But the real kicker was the final document, a court filing I'd already submitted, initiating legal proceedings to recover my funds and challenging the tax fraud. Dad would be receiving official notification within a few days. I walked out of that house at 3 a.m., feeling lighter than I had in years. The next morning, I was settling into my new studio apartment, a tiny place I'd secured weeks ago with money I'd been secretly saving, when my phone started exploding with calls and messages. First was Mom, crying and asking where I was, begging me to come home so we could talk. I didn't answer. Then came Dad's calls, which quickly escalated from confused to angry to panicked as he realized what I'd left for them. My brother called next, and I could hear the hysteria in his voice as he demanded to know what I'd done, how I could ruin his future like this. He'd apparently just learned that his college fund was mostly gone and that the family was about to face serious financial and legal consequences. The calls kept coming all day. Extended family members who'd somehow gotten wind of the situation started reaching out, some supportive, others trying to guilt me into backing down. Apparently, word had spread quickly through the family network. But I'd made my choice, and I wasn't backing down. Update 1. It's been a week since I left, and the situation has escalated beyond anything I expected. Dad showed up at my workplace on Tuesday, causing such a scene that security had to escort him out. He was screaming about how I was destroying the family, demanding I drop the legal action. My supervisor, the same guy who'd helped me understand the financial irregularities in the first place, made it clear that any future harassment would result in a restraining order. Mom has been sending me dozens of text messages daily, alternating between guilt trips about breaking up the family and desperate pleas for me to reconsider. She keeps insisting that they were planning to pay me back, that it was all just a misunderstanding. The messages paint a picture of a household in complete chaos. My brother's panic has reached new heights. He's apparently had to withdraw his acceptance from his first-choice college because they can't afford the tuition without access to his fund. He's been calling and texting, threatening everything from physical violence to turning the rest of the family against me. What he doesn't seem to understand is that I'm perfectly fine being cut off from people who were willing to steal from me. The most interesting development came Thursday when I received a call from my grandparents' estate lawyer. Apparently, my parents had been in contact with him, trying to claim that the education trusts were meant to be used for family expenses, not specifically for individual education costs. He'd laughed them out of his office and called to commend me for standing up for myself. He also shared some information that made my blood boil even more. My parents had actually tried to access my brother's fund too, but he'd set up additional protections on that account after noticing irregularities with mine. They'd been stealing from me specifically because his fund was harder to touch. Friday brought the official IRS notification to my parents' address. Dad called me 17 times that day, each voicemail more desperate than the last. The tax fraud investigation could result in significant penalties and even criminal charges if the IRS determines it was intentional. Meanwhile, I've been thriving. My tiny apartment feels like a palace compared to the toxic environment I'd been living in. I've been working extra shifts, saving money, and actually planning for a future that belongs to me. The community college has excellent programs, and with my education fund restored, I'll be able to transfer to a 4-year university without drowning in debt. Update 2. 2 weeks have passed, and the legal wheels are turning faster than my parents anticipated. The court hearing for the return of my education fund is scheduled for next month. My lawyer is confident we'll recover the full amount plus interest, especially given the clear paper trail and the fact that my parents have no legal justification for using money that was explicitly designated for my education. My brother made one final attempt to reach out, this time trying a different approach. He called claiming he wanted to apologize and make things right. When I finally answered, he spent an hour explaining how this situation was ruining his life, how he'd have to attend community college now, how his girlfriend was disappointed in his family's financial situation. I listened patiently and then asked him one simple question. Where was this concern for my life when they were stealing my money and forcing me to work multiple jobs while claiming there was no money for my education? He had no answer. The most satisfying moment came when he tried to suggest we split the remaining education funds equally, as if he was being generous. I reminded him that he had his own fund, which had been protected and was still intact. My fund had been the one they'd raided, and I wanted every penny back. Dad's latest strategy involves trying to turn extended family members against me. He's been calling aunts, uncles, and cousins, painting me as an ungrateful son who's destroying the family over money. What he hasn't anticipated is that several family members have been suspicious of their financial claims for years and are actually supportive of my actions. My aunt on mom's side called to let me know she'd always wondered how my parents could claim to be struggling financially while my brother attended expensive private schools and had all the latest gadgets. She'd offered to help with my college expenses years ago, but my parents had told her it wasn't necessary because they had everything handled. The IRS investigation is also moving forward. An agent contacted me to verify the information I'd provided and to ask for additional documentation. Dad's going to face penalties at minimum, and depending on how long this pattern of fraudulent filing has been going on, he could face serious legal consequences. Mom made one last desperate attempt to fix things by showing up at my apartment building. She waited in the lobby for hours until I came home from work. When she saw me, she broke down crying, begging me to stop the legal proceedings and come home. She tried to explain that they'd only used my education money temporarily, that they were planning to pay it back before I started college. She claimed they'd been trying to give my brother opportunities they'd never had, and they'd gotten in over their heads financially. I told her that intentions don't matter when the result is theft. I explained that they'd made these choices repeatedly over years, always prioritizing my brother while treating me like an afterthought. The education fund was just the final proof of a pattern I'd lived with my entire life. She left crying, but I felt no guilt. For the first time in my life, I was putting my own needs first, and it felt incredible. Final update. It's been 2 months since I walked out, and the transformation in my life has been remarkable. The court ruled in my favor completely. I recovered my entire education fund plus interest, totaling just over $58,000. The judge was particularly harsh in his comments about parents who would steal from their child's education fund, especially money that had been gifted by grandparents specifically for that purpose. Dad's tax fraud case is still pending, but his accountant has advised him to expect significant penalties and possible criminal charges. The IRS doesn't take kindly to fraudulent dependent claims, especially when they discover a pattern of financial abuse. My brother ended up attending the local community college, which honestly is probably better for him than the expensive private university he'd planned on. Maybe having to work for something for once in his life will give him some perspective. The most unexpected development has been reconnecting with extended family members who'd been kept at arm's length by my parents for years. My aunt on mom's side revealed that she and several other relatives had suspected something was wrong with my parents' financial situation but hadn't known how to help. Now I have a support network I never knew existed. I've excelled in my community college classes, made Dean's List both semesters, and have been accepted to transfer to the state university next fall with a partial scholarship. My education fund will cover the remaining costs, and I'll graduate debt-free with a degree in accounting, inspired by the financial investigation that changed my life. The warehouse job has led to a promotion to logistics coordinator, and my supervisor has become an unofficial mentor. He's helped me understand not just finances, but the importance of standing up for yourself when others try to take advantage. I still get occasional messages from my parents and brother, but they've mostly given up on trying to reconcile. Dad's facing the consequences of his financial decisions. Mom's dealing with the reality that her favoritism cost her a son, and my brother is learning what it's like to work for what you want. Do I miss having a family? Sometimes. But I've learned that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about people who support you, believe in you, and treat you with respect. The family I've chosen through friends, mentors, and extended relatives who actually care about my well-being is worth more than maintaining relationships with people who saw me as nothing more than a source of income and labor. The birthday that was supposed to be a celebration of my life instead became the day I finally started living it on my own terms. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who don't value you, even when they share your DNA. I'm not the same person who received that devastating text message on his birthday. I'm stronger, more independent, and most importantly, I've learned that my worth isn't determined by how much others are willing to sacrifice me for their own benefit. My parents taught me a valuable lesson, just not the one they intended. Sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones you need to protect yourself from the most. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim anymore.